Hi folks, I'm Robert Spencer. Welcome to Moving Beyond. You know, here in Boise today, it's a very gray, damp, dismal day outside, and I thought I'd take advantage of that to do some roller games. And I do mean games, and I want to invite you to come play with me today. So I'm going to be using a roller. It's a white styrofoam roller. It's 36 inches long with a diameter of about 6 inches. It used to be hard to find these things, but if you went online in your search engine and you put down 6-inch styrofoam roller, you would probably get quite a few sources of places that you can buy it. Like I said, I think this one was about $12 a couple of years ago. Locally, you may be able to find them for sale in physical therapists or chiropractor's office, for example. And from those sources, they're often used for tissue kinds of work. And you will use the roller and you will roll across it in certain kinds of ways that theoretically are going to break down some of the connective tissue in your muscles to make those muscles longer and more flexible. It's also used for certain kinds of trigger point work, and I've done those things. People have shown me how it is, and I'll tell you, it's a real challenge. You kind of have to have this notion that this is a good pain that you're experiencing. But in Feldenkrais work, we don't use good pain. We don't use bad pain either. We're going to try to avoid pain and discomfort and enjoy the process today because it really can be very, very playful. So we're going to work on a way of learning a couple of very interesting and important elements to balancing, whether you're lying on the roller like I will be doing, or if you're standing up like I'm doing now. Any time where you can find how do you align yourself, how do you become aware in a very precise way of the place where the surface supports you, and how you can be very centered along your midline in whatever position and activity so that you don't have to flail around or grab things to be able to balance. You know, by the way, stability is the property of an object that makes it difficult to move. And in most of our activities, we want to make it easier to move. And that means we become unstable. Just standing up makes me much less stable than if I'm sitting down or lying on the floor. When I reduce the stability in my body and in relation to the environment, I have to do something about that to not fall down. And what we do, that set of actions, is what I call balance. So let me put this down on the floor, turn the camera around, and we'll get started playing some roller games. I'll be with you in a moment. All right, here's my playground for this afternoon. The roller is on a folded blanket, and this is a little gimmick that I would encourage you to use as you get started, because having the soft blanket there makes the roller a little less wobbly for you and makes it easier to get started with this. And then as you get better and better and more skilled at this, then you can make the blanket thinner, not have it fold so thickly, and eventually not use the blanket at all. All right, let me go down and get in place and we'll get started. Now, I sit on one end, put my head on the other end, and then I want to find the middle of me. I want to find the midline of my body and have it be as clearly above as possible the midline of the roller. Oh, and another thing about the strategy for this particular roller game is to commit to the breathing. If I start to hold my breath or breathe harder, it means I'm making an effort and I'm struggling to stay in balance. And the idea is not to succeed at any of these particular maneuvers, but to keep your breathing stable. And that's much more important than succeeding at something that's basically a little game. But it's a game in which you can learn something that's very, very useful for your health, for your safety, for your comfort in life. Now, to start with that, the first thing I'm going to do is lie down on my back and take as long as it takes to understand how do I stay on this thing from the beginning. How much do I rely on the midline of myself to support me, and how much do I rely on what I call the outriggers, which are my arms and my feet, to keep me stable. And then we're going to vary that on purpose. As soon as I get set where I feel really settled, where I'm not wobbling, where I'm not pushing against the floor with my hands and feet, and where my breathing is easy. And then I get calibrated to the breathing so that that remains the same throughout and I don't change it. So I don't want to disrupt the breathing, and I want to be able to tell the difference. Remember, it does not matter if I succeed at any of the game's little tricks as we go on. What's really important is staying with the breathing. So that's not so bad right now. So now what I start to do is to experiment with removing the stability of one of the outriggers and then more. So let's say I start with my right hand, and I feel the weight of my body, midline of my body to the midline of the roller, and I very slowly start to levitate my right arm. Now when I take this prop away, there's a tendency for my body to want to roll into that vacancy. But I don't have to go there. If I stay relaxed and maybe slightly find an adjustment of keeping my weight in the middle instead of going with the flow to the other side, then I find that I can take this arm and I can do whatever I want with it, and I can continue to talk to you without any disturbance in my breathing. Then it may be the same on the other side when I start to lift the left hand. And it's pretty similar. It could be different. So I find I can do things with this arm and I'm stable, I'm not wobbling, I'm not having to catch myself with my arms or my feet. Now the legs are a lot heavier, so this will displace a lot more weight, and I will have to really pay attention to the breathing and to how I keep my midline, where I move little subtle adjustments in my ribs all down my spine. And let's see, I might want to make sure I've got my feet positioned right. And another thing is, when you start to lift a heavy leg, I would encourage you to notice what you do first with your low back. And you have a couple of options. Often when people start to lift the leg, they will tip their pelvis down and lift the back, arch it away from the roller, and that probably is going to be uncomfortable for you and may not be safe for everybody. But if you tip the pelvis back and bring your lower back closer to the roller, and then slowly find what you can do. All right, that makes me, I have to be very careful here because a sudden movement starts me rolling. All right, now I feel pretty soft here. I'm still breathing, so I'll put that one back down. Get settled again, and then think about the other one. So when I lift this left leg away from the floor, no longer have that prop there, there would be a tendency for my body to fall off the roller in that direction. So I have to be very soft, think about coming down into the roller even more with the middle of me, and maybe I'll make a slight adjustment, and it just takes a tiny bit of my ribs coming out to this side to counterbalance so that I can do without that outrigger on the left foot. Alright, so I had to compensate a little bit. I rolled just a little bit, but I was pretty satisfied that I didn't hold my breath. So then I can put that down. I get stable again. If I start to feel uncomfortable because of the pressure of lying on the roller, get off and rest for a moment. Now, after I've got a satisfactory way of lifting the outriggers without violating the prime directive of breath interference, then I can do some interesting stuff. I can start to say, well, what if I lifted both hands? Can I stay now with two outriggers but stay in my midline? Minimize the use on the outriggers and stay comfortable with my breathing. Yeah. Now, can I do that with the weight in both legs? That remains to be seen. Let's give it a try. But I don't want to lift the legs unless I feel continuously supported down the middle of my back against the middle of the roller. can do that. It's a little more wobbly, but my adjustments can come just from very slight movements one way or the other with my rib cage going to one side or the other until I'm right in the middle again. And that doesn't have to become too wobbly. All right, we'll put those down. Now I have other combinations I can do, and I'm sure you get the idea. I'm not going to walk you through all of them, but look, I can raise one foot and one hand. I can do the other hand and foot, the diagonals. If I can lift two on one side. I can even add a third to that if I'm very careful and pay attention to the rule of not altering my breathing. Now eventually, if I stay here for a while, I may find that I can stabilize and balance so well that I can lift all four outriggers at the same time. That has to be done slowly, because if you try to accomplish it and to achieve it on purpose, that is a really important deal, you will hold your breath. And the success at lifting is not nearly as important as staying balanced on the roller, midline to midline. All right. You roll off. And by the way, if you fall, it doesn't really matter because you can only fall 6 inches, although your nervous system will probably at first act as if you were falling from a very great height. But you can roll off, you can stop, you can come back to it. So enjoy your roller games, have fun, and live long and prosper. I'll see you next time.